Hi everyone, this is Patrick. Thank you for coming to my channel. So on this episode of Millennial Finance 101, we are doing ECON, Microecon, and it's going to be the first of a long series of principles of microeconomics, and I'm also going to do a macroeconomics class. So I've been a tutor for 10 years at the college level, and I'm going to give you all the tricks and the practice questions spread out through this video to help you ace your exam. So I know you guys are having a hard time learning all this information and it's tough, but I hope these videos will get you through it. So let's get started. All right, you guys, I hope you're excited. So today we're going to talk about the factors of demand, and I have a great memory tool that I've been using for years, so you will never forget how the shifters affect the graph. I also am going to give you a brief introduction into substitutes and complements, as well as the inverse relationship between price and quantity. And finally, I have 3 different practice questions for you guys at different levels, and I give you step-by-step explanation as to why the answer is what it is and how to eliminate wrong answers along the way. So the questions are going to get more difficult further along in the series, so if that's not what you're looking for, please check out my other videos. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or want to see anything in future videos, please leave a comment below. The first thing we're going to end up doing now is trying to figure out what are the factors that affect demand. The easiest way to remember is an acronym MR. So MISTER. So MR is the easiest way to remember the factors that affect the demand curve. The M stands for market size. Basically, how big the market is. If it's growing, if it's shrinking, that will both affect demand. The second one is income level. Are you getting richer? Are you getting poorer? Are you making more money? Are you making less money? The next one here is special circumstances. And when I say special circumstances, I'm talking about natural disasters or acts of war. Things that can really change the entire demand. The next one is tastes and preferences. How is the public changing their taste for one demand over another? I guess in the old days you can think that dolls and children's toys used to be really popular, right? But as children have gotten older and more tech savvy, they've turned to more video games and technology, right? So we could say the tastes and preferences for old-fashioned games has decreased, the tastes and preferences for technology has increased. So our demand, using that example, our demand for dolls and old-fashioned toys has decreased. Our demand for technology and technology-related games has increased. So E stands here for expectations, but it's more like expectations of price. If we're in a recession and we think, oh, things are only going to get worse, our expectation is that prices are going to go even lower. When prices go lower, our demand for goods today decreases, because why buy something today when you can get it cheaper tomorrow? And then the last one here is for related goods. That's what the R stands for. And then when I say related goods, I really mean substitutes and complements. So very briefly, a substitute good is a good that you use instead of something else. So we could say Coke and Pepsi. That's one of the most traditional examples. Coke and Pepsi are substitute goods. You would either get one or the other, right? Complement goods are goods that are used together. So a good example of that are milk and cereal. And the reason why it's so important is because when prices of one will change, it will affect the price of another. So let's do some practice questions. We'll start with the easiest ones, and if you need a little bit more time, just pause the screen so you can think a little bit. So chicken and beef are substitutes. So the question is, if the price of chicken increases, what happens to the demand for beef? I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. So the correct answer for this one is that the demand for beef increases. So this is a straight up definition. If the price of a substitute increases, people will go for the alternative. So if the price of chicken increases, as what happened, the quantity demanded for beef increases. Now, your teachers love asking questions and then switching it up at the very end. So, you see how the second part, the bonus question, asked what happened to the demand for chicken. The demand for chicken will decrease, the demand for beef will increase. So, make sure you pay attention to what question your teacher is asking you. This next question is slightly more challenging, but definitely doable. So the question is, which of the following would not shift the demand curve for beef? So think about Mr. I'll give you guys a couple seconds. Which one applies? The correct answer for this one is B, but let's go option by option. The reason why it's not A, because a widely publicized study which indicates beef increases cholesterol, that would be a shift in consumer tastes and preferences. So that's one of the factors. It won't be C, because an effective advertising campaign by pork is a substitute. So that won't be one of the answers too. And finally, it cannot be D, because a change in income, as we know, also affects the demand curve. So the only one that doesn't change it is a reduction in the price of cattle feed. And why is that? Cattle feed would be an input, and an input would affect supply, which we'll see in a later video. Here's another medium question for you guys. Which of the following would be most likely to cause the demand for motorcycles to shift right? So I'll give you a hint. Shifting right also means increasing demand. So think about Mr. and which of these things would increase your demand. Now, the reason why I chose this as a medium question was basically because of option A. So the reason why B is the best answer is because public transport is going to be a substitute for motorcycles. So that's going to be one of the reasons why it would increase the demand. A rise in the cost of motor insurance is not going to do it because, again, that would, if anything, would be an input. That also would be something that would discourage people from buying motorcycles. And a rise in the price of petrol, that would be a complement good. So that also wouldn't do it. I think a lot of people would have chosen option A. Now, there's something we'll cover later in this series, the difference between quantity demanded and a change in demand. Anything that actually changes price is only going to be a change in quantity demanded, which is a shift along the curve. The question here is asking for a shift of the curve, which again would be referring back to Mr. So anything regarding a change in price is going to be an actual change in quantity demanded and not demand. I know it's a very small distinction. Now, this last question is more difficult because of the way it's phrased rather than the actual material. So take a couple seconds to read through it, pause it if you need a little bit more time, and try and think about what they're really asking you for. So let's read this question and try and figure out what they're asking. An increase in the price of a product will reduce the amount of it purchased because. So what they're basically asking, an increase in the price of a product, a price increase will reduce the amount of it purchased, which will change the quantity demanded. So basically, they're just asking us to figure out which one of these has an inverse relationship with an increase in price. So it's pretty straightforward after that. So we know that supply curves are upward sloping, right? They do not have an inverse relationship. I know we haven't really talked about it too much yet, but we know for a fact that demand curves are downward sloping, and since we haven't talked about supply curves, it can't be option A. Option B, the higher price means that real incomes have risen. That does not necessarily answer the question because it doesn't show the inverse relationship. We know option C is the answer because we know already substitutes are one of the driving factors for a shift in demand. The last one, why it's not option D, consumers substitute relatively high price for relatively low price products. It is actually the opposite. If consumers were substituting high priced for low price, it would result in the quantity demanded increasing. Now, the only way that this would apply is if the question was the opposite. A decrease in the price would increase the amount of it purchased. So that would be the only way. Now, this one's tricky because option C and option D both sort of hint at the income effect, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But option C is the only one that correctly addresses the inverse relationship between the two.